The August 2023 CFA exam results were announced recently, and the pass rates are a little bit lower. There are two very relevant points that we learned from these recent numbers that will apply especially for level 2 exam test takers in the future. The August level 1 pass rate was 37%, which is the lowest pass rate that we've seen so far this year for the level 1 exam. And honestly, 37% is one of the lowest numbers we've seen historically, except for that period shortly after the pandemic when things were like 25% pass rates. And that is a little bit disheartening, at least for hopeful level 1 candidates, because the minimum passing score estimate posted by 300hours.com was also just slightly lower. So this is a debated topic, but that generally means that the exam was probably slightly more difficult, or candidates were probably slightly less prepared than they have been in the past. And I usually feel like the former is a little more likely when we see results like this, especially considering we're talking about thousands of candidates taking the exam. Hopefully the results are statistically significant. On the recent level 2 exam, the pass rate dropped a whole lot. Now, if you can remember back to the spring of this year, when the first level 2 exam sitting results were announced, it showed over a 50% pass rate. That was one of the highest pass rates we had seen for the level 2 exam in the past. Not only was it an impressive pass rate, but the minimum passing score was also a higher number than we had seen in the past. So that showed that either level 2 candidates have been more prepared than ever, or that the level 2 types of questions being asked now are easier questions, meaning the level 2 exam maybe isn't that much harder than the level 1 exam has been historically. That would be a shift for the Institute. However, these most recent results from the August sitting of the level 2 exam could show that that shift has not happened, because the minimum passing score estimate was just barely lower than the earlier sitting, so still near all-time highs, if you remember what the level 2 MPSs normally look like. And the pass rate came all the way down from 51% to 44% in this sitting. 44% is much more comparable to historic averages, or at least over the last 20 years, for the level 2 exam. Much lower pass rate than we saw earlier at this point. For the minimum passing score to again take a small decrease, but the pass rate to decline pretty significantly, it might mean that the level 2 exam is in fact going to stay and remain maybe the most difficult, or at least we could say a very difficult CFA exam, despite what some people were talking about in the spring of 2023. The big surprise here though, and the reason that I say it might be showing those things, is that there was a very small number of people who actually took the August 2023 level 2 exam. There were only about 9,000 candidates to take this sitting of the level 2 exam. And that's still a good chunk of people, but that's extremely low compared to historical averages. You have to go back to, I think, the early 80s or maybe the 70s before you saw exam sittings this unattended for the level 2 test. And yes, I know that historically it's always been one exam each year, and now the level 2 is offered twice, and so we need to combine those two numbers together. If we include both level 2 sittings from 2023, that's about 23 or 24,000 candidates, and so you at least have to go back 20 years or 25 years still to see sittings for the level 2 test that were that unutilized. I wouldn't say that the sample size was too small to get statistically significant results, so I would stand by a couple of the early arguments that no, the level 2 exam is actually staying one of the most difficult and robust of the three. But potentially a bigger conversation here is similar to one that I posted in a video maybe 6 months ago, which was, why is CFA exam participation declining so much? It's not like we had extremely low pass rates for the level 1 exam recently or last year, such that there wouldn't be many people who would be able to sit for the level 2 exam. That wasn't true. It's just looking like two things, and both are bad for future candidate counts. Less people are taking the level 1 exam, and very oddly, some of those people who are passing the level 1 exam aren't sitting for a level 2 exam. At least they haven't yet, not in 2023 during one of the two opportunities. So there's a trend going on here that isn't directly being addressed by the Institute, and I don't know that anyone has a great hypothesis for why either of these factors resulting in lower candidate counts on these exams might be. So as a future level 2 candidate, this is good and bad. As you think about your level 2 planning, or if you just passed level 2, you're even ahead of the game, because there are fewer people signing up for this thing, meaning there's going to be potentially a lower quantity of charter holders 20 years from now in the business, in the finance industry, which, by the way, probably isn't a good thing. Certainly the CFA Institute isn't going to like that trend. But for you, the good part of this is that it could create a little bit of a competitive advantage. There are going to be less potential charter holders around. But also could be concerning because of what I mentioned on the exam stats, minimum passing score barely down, so still near all-time highs. And with a pass rate down near historical norms, much lower than we saw earlier this year, it means that yes, these questions are still very hard, and yes, they're saying you might need to get 70% of them right to even clear this thing, whereas historically it's been closer to 60% of the questions needed to be answered correctly to pass. They're still hard questions, there's a high bar, and I think that may continue to result in low, even level 2 pass rates as we go into the future. So let me know your thoughts on these trends, especially if you recently sat for one of the exams. Let us know if you passed. I want to congratulate you. Let us know what you thought of the test in terms of its fairness to the materials that you studied, or if it differed at all. And if you're seeing anything amongst other fellow candidates surrounding the lack of a desire to sit for their level 2 test. Why are so few people taking this thing now? I appreciate you sticking around to the end of this video, and as always, thanks for watching.